Hi, welcome. In this objective for Chapter 14, we're going to take a look at the profit maximizing point for a perfectly competitive market. This is also the profit maximizing point for any market. And then we're going to take a look at some graphs and take a look at the data behind the graphs and take a look at why a particular market decides how much to produce, or I'm sorry, a particular firm decides how much to produce. So let's get at it. Go ahead and share my screen with you. Okay, so in this objective, we're going to take a look at how much a particular firm might decide to produce and why that they're going to produce that amount. Remember, in a perfectly competitive market, the product is homogeneous. It's all the same. So people buy based upon price. Okay, now when we talk about a profit maximization point, one thing we want to remember is kind of going back to the lectures that we looked at previously. And if this is, let's see if I can do this. There we go. Okay, so this is the total revenue curve. Okay, go ahead and put that on a graph. And this is the total cost curve. We want to operate where these two are farthest apart, and that's going to be where profit is maximized. Okay, now remember, if we did measure this and took the slope, that would be the marginal revenue, and it would equal 0. Here, the marginal revenue would equal 0. So this quantity point right here, which would be our quantity that maximizes profit, is going to be where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So that is a really important idea. So remember, the idea is to maximize profit because we're saying that's the goal of the firm. So profit is going to be maximized where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. Put another way, the slope of the total revenue curve equals the slope of the total cost curve. Those of you that have a background in calculus can easily see that the max of the total revenue curve, okay? Or if we look at it, the first order derivative of the total revenue curve is actually marginal revenue. And the min of the total cost curve, or the first order derivative of the total cost curve, is marginal cost. Where those two are equal to each other becomes this profit maximization point. Okay, now that's true of every single industry. We want to produce where marginal revenue and marginal cost are the same. So in answering this question, what quantity maximizes profit? It's the quantity that corresponds with where marginal revenue and marginal cost are the same. So if, for instance, we have the marginal revenue is greater than marginal cost, then what should we do to increase our profitability? We're going to increase quantity. And if you want, you can go back to Chapter 13, Objective 1, where I discuss where we're going with this. And it will help understand why we would increase quantity. If marginal cost is greater than marginal revenue, then we're going to reduce quantity. Okay, so if marginal revenue is less than marginal cost, then we're going to reduce our quantity. And again, the whole idea here is profit maximization. So only where these two are equal, where marginal revenue and marginal cost equal each other, is where profit is maximized. So I think it bears repeating, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. So let's look at this idea in a perfectly competitive firm. Okay, So this is similar to what we've looked at in the previous exercise. We just pulled the total revenues off from here. And then we're not, at this point, we don't know the total cost. But remember, profit is equal to total revenue minus total cost. Total cost is equal to fixed cost plus variable cost. Total revenue is just price times quantity. Marginal revenue is the change in total revenue divided by the change in quantity. And marginal cost is the change in total cost divided by the change in quantity. So let's look at a perfectly competitive market. Remember, in a perfectly competitive market, some things to remember. Marginal revenue, oh, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Let me just erase that real quick. There we go. Okay. So there we go. Okay. So remember, in a perfectly competitive market, and only in a perfectly competitive market, price is equal to marginal revenue, which is equal to average revenue. Okay. So let's go ahead and get some cost data in here. So we have, that's my TA. Of course, you can see her in the background there. Yeah. Well, actually, you can't. Hold on. I'm sure that you want to see her now. So this is my TA back here, Zoe. Yeah. Zoe, are you a good TA? What do you think, Dodge? You a good TA? Are you? Yeah, you're pretty motivational. Okay, let's go back to our problem. A little ADD kicking in there. All right. So in looking at this, we could, again, just to kind of reiterate some things we've looked at previously, and hello, okay. And remember that we can find fixed cost by looking right here at quantity equals 0. So what would be our fixed cost? Our fixed cost would be 5. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of put that in there small because it's not the focus of what we're looking at right here. So I'll go ahead and put the fixed costs on the top there. That means that any other cost would be variable costs. So 5 and 4 is 9, 10, 18, 28, I believe, and then 40. So that's just from the previous lesson. Profit then is going to be our total revenue minus our total cost. So here, 0 minus 5. So we actually have a negative 5 total cost here. Total cost is, total revenue is 10 minus 9, so that's 1 positive. 20 minus 15 is 5. 30 minus 23 is 7. 40 minus 33 is 7. And 50 minus 45 would be 5. Now this is interesting. Let's take a look at this. This basically says if we were to look at profit here, we would have something that looks like this. And what would happen is the profitability would come to its highest point. Okay, let's see if I can do this. Right here, again, quantity, between 3 and 4 units. That's where the profitability is highest, between 3 and 4. So let's go ahead and look at why that would be so in this last 3 columns, and you're going to see why profits maximize between 3 and 4. So again, remember, price is the same as marginal revenue in a perfectly competitive market. Marginal cost is just our change in total cost divided by our change in quantity. So here we have 9 minus 5 divided by 1, so that's 4. We have 15 minus 9, which is 6. We have 23 minus 15, which is 8. we have 33 minus 23, which is 10. And here we have 45 minus 33, which is 8. Okay, so remember I said we want to look at where profit is maximized, where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. On this graph, we can easily see that our marginal revenue, that profit is maximized right here, where marginal revenue and marginal cost are the same. They're at 10 and 10. So if I were to then put maybe a number here, because we know price, marginal revenue, average revenue are all the same, the price here would be 10. Okay, so let's just look at our change in profit just to prove the point, because that's essentially what we're doing. I need to pick up some bread. I see that a little bit easier. Okay, there we go. Okay, so change in profit. So we have marginal revenue 4. I'm sorry, marginal revenue 10 minus 4, so that's 6. 10 minus 6 is 4. 10 minus 8 is 2. 10 minus 10 is 0 because that's our maximum. That's where profit is maximized. And then 10 minus 8 is 2. Yeah. Okay, so when we look at this, it also proves the point to us, and it's a little different point, so let me pick up a different color here. It also proves the point to us that if I were producing, say, somewhere between 0 and 2 units, then what I would want to do is to increase my quantity to increase my profitability. If I'm producing 5 or more units, okay, then I want to decrease my quantity to increase my profitability. Okay? All right. Let me erase all of this on the slide. And yep, we'll just fill in the numbers here, make sure we got it right. Okay. Here we have the marginal cost curve. All right, and remember, marginal cost is just the slope of the total cost curve. And the marginal cost curve is very closely related to our supply curve. Okay? All right. So here we have our price, which is equal to marginal revenue, which is equal to average revenue. They're all the same. So this just takes the previous data and puts it on a graph for us. So a great question to ask right here would be, what quantity maximizes profit? Okay, so what quantity maximizes profit? To find that quantity, we're going to look at where marginal revenue and marginal cost are the same. We're going to follow that down to our quantity, and whatever quantity this corresponds with will be the quantity that maximizes profitability in this perfectly competitive market. Also note, if the price were to change, that's going to make an implication for us in the quantity. So, put differently, pick up a red. Let's say the price changes in this perfectly competitive market to P2. So the price increases. Now we know that when the price increases, quantity supplied increases, all else held constant. When the price increases, quantity demanded decreases, all else held constant. So here's our price, here's our marginal revenue, and average revenue. Now the new quantity that maximizes profitability is going to be here, and I'll just call that Q2. So as the price increased, marginal revenue increased, and the marginal cost curve remained constant in the short term. Okay, let me go ahead and erase on the slide here. Okay, if we were at quantity A, what would we want to do? You got to increase quantity, right, to increase our profitability. If we're at quantity B, what would we want to do? We would want to decrease our quantity to raise our profitability. And it's only at where marginal revenue and marginal cost are the same is where profitability is maximized. Here we have the price going up, and again, notice that the quantity will increase. So the marginal cost curve determines the firm's quantity at any price because the marginal cost curve is remaining constant, but marginal revenue changes as the price changes. So in this instance, the marginal cost curve is the firm's supply curve, and it's just one firm's supply curve here. I always say is related because sometimes later on in economics you go, yeah, is it really related? Okay, that's the end of this objective. And sorry about the little interruption from my TA. I think she might have to go outside. So thank you for your time, attention, and I'll see you in the next objective. Thanks.